My guests on this week's episode of Suds Search are Dave Spannhake and Dane Saville from Reunion Marketing. Reunion Marketing is an automotive digital marketing agency with specialists in SEO, PPC, and a suite of customized services for dealerships. Dave and Dane both work together at a large dealer group. In 2015, Dave, Dane, and a larger group founded Reunion Marketing, which has grown steadily since its inception. Dave is a frequent presenter at major automotive digital marketing conferences, including CIADA, Digital Dealer, Kain Automotive Conference, and Driving Sales. Dave is also a frequent columnist and blogger. I'm going to start our conversation by talking about a recent blog post he wrote titled, "For Reunion Marketing, Change Has Always Been the New Normal." Dane is a popular podcaster and the host of KPI Cafe. He has a really well-rounded suite of skills and has worked in automotive digital marketing for over 10 years. Grab something cold to drink and join me for a conversation with Dave Spannhake and Dane Saville. We'll chat about how the chip shortage has impacted digital marketing for car dealers. We'll talk about why they keep a low client to consultant ratio. And we'll talk about the award Reunion won for the industry's most valuable insight competition. All right, Dave and Dane, welcome to Suds Search. How you guys doing?
Doing great. Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, doing well. How are you doing?
Happy to have you guys on. I wanted to start with a blog post that, Dave, you actually wrote earlier this year that said, "For Reunion, marketing change has always been the new normal." To summarize the article, the idea is that embracing change has been instrumental to the culture at the company. This is a strategic advantage for you guys. How so? Kind of explain this concept to our audience.
Sure. I mean, this is rooted pretty deep in our history. Not just Reunion. So the founders of Reunion, we all worked together at the Leith Automotive Group in Raleigh, North Carolina, and really built a pretty strong name for ourselves in the industry because we were, strong embracers of change. The Great Recession happened. Lost a lot of employees there. They actually cut off a lot of employees, and then, we're spending a lot of money in the newspaper at the time and on TV and things like that. And, really seeing that the consumer behavior was changing so much back then. And so we started moving a lot of money to search and really focusing on content and SEO and, built up a pretty incredible last 3 years that we were there. We increased the lead volume to the group by 400%. The revenue of the group increased by 75%, which, equates to hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm not going to give specifics because they're pretty private, and mention their names, but I mean, it was a tremendous success story because of that embracing of change and what consumers want. And so that's something that from the beginning of Reunion, the reason it's called Reunion is because we left and reunited to start Reunion Marketing. And after that time and experience in retail, but from the get-go, it's really focusing in on what are the changes happening at Google, what's happening at Facebook, how are consumers behaving, and these last 2 years, like more than ever, we're seeing a ton of change, and it's happening at a time that dealerships are having to experience, change themselves. I mean, the inventory shortage, the pandemic, all these different things that, it's a really great time to be sharing this information, I think, right now.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. One of the things I screw up a lot, guys, is like when I talk to other local SEOs or people in auto, I sort of like automatically assume everyone watching knows something that they may not know. Like it might not occur to everyone listening that there's a giant chip shortage going on in automobile. And before I want to ask you about ads and I want to talk to you about what you guys do every day. But before we do, just kind of, this has been a really crazy year for cars, for car dealers. For the audience that's going to come from all different walks of life, we will have some people who will know this. Maybe Dane and Dave, kind of tell our audience a little bit about how truly weird this year has been for auto dealers.
Yeah, I mean, you talk to dealers who are used to, hundreds of cars on the lot, and you talk to them, they're like, well, it's a ghost town. We have 4 or 5 cars available, and oftentimes, even those are sort of, I don't want to say claimed, but they have consumers who've expressed interest, and there's, more interest than there is that supply. So it's really interesting, and the paradigm shift of dealers realizing, talking to different dealers and general managers, the idea that now they're finally embracing the idea of reaching out to the local community to source cars, which kind of blew my mind that you have this local organization and why that wasn't gangbusters for dealers all along. The local, instead of just going to the auctions, the local community, your local neighbors, people you see at barbecues, and there's this big paradigm shift in how they're sourcing vehicles. But so there's different conversations happening with dealers that weren't, preceding the pandemic and this whole chip crisis.
Well, fascinating. Put on top of that, there's COVID for another year. All this other stuff is just crazy times. So one of the biggest takeaways for me from the article, Dave, was that agencies, especially entrepreneurial, self-funded agencies like Reunion and Searchlight for that matter, we're used to change. This is something we live in with a certain level of change all the time. Dealer principals are not accustomed to this much turbulence. But for better or for worse, we might be able to help them in pretty unusual ways, like interesting ways that you might not even think of. Did I capture your sentiment right? That we might be able to meet them where they are right now.
Yeah, I mean, with how much is going on, I mean, sometimes I hear certain vendors badmouth, the knowledge of different dealerships and not being up to speed, and frankly, coming from the retail side, the number of different responsibilities that they have to worry about across all the facets of their dealership or dealership groups or the different roles, they're expecting to have partners come with this information. The biggest negative feedback I hear about people with companies before they join, partnerships with us is that, they were telling their providers what to do, and they were pretty much order givers as opposed to, getting the great knowledge and wisdom. One of the reasons that we like you guys so much is, like us, you care a lot about educating dealers. This is such a great podcast you guys have because you're out there always, sharing a lot of those insights. And, that's one of the reasons that, Greg and Dane and I have been friends, for years is because out there actively truth telling and showing what's going on out there, because there's a lot of folks who kind of take advantage of that situation, that dealers do put a lot of trust in their partners to be at the forefront of change and to be coming with the innovations and all the changes that are happening, and focusing on the partnership and the growth of the dealership. Yeah,
I love it. There are other ways our agencies are aligned as well. One of them I learned about from reading this blog post was that you cap out customer success folks. So we do something similar. It's always been amazing to me when I interview, SEOs from other places. They might be responsible for like 50 dealerships, like just an insane amount of dealerships, 75 dealerships. The greedy businessman in me would love to stick 50 dealerships on one person and make a lot more money. What benefits have you guys seen from capping the number of dealerships, one person can work on?
Morale, right? I mean, you happy employees, and then then the tasks, their responsibilities, they're able to dig further into those, right? They're not spread so thin that they're able to really dedicate the right amount of time to provide what we call unrivaled customer service, right? We want to deliver more than what is expected, and by not overloading them. Not only are they happier, not only is their morale better, but then the insights they deliver to our partners is better, and so our partners benefit from that. So there's a twofold benefit of internal morale boost and a better buy-in in the culture and things that we're building, as well as the deliverables we're sending to our dealer partners are just that much more valuable and insightful. Okay, awesome. And then the other thing that is similar for us, and again, this is going to need a little setup for people who are not in automotive, but the OEM program is really interesting to me. That businesses can get, auto dealers can get co-op money from the tier one for advertising with OEM approved vendors. We have chosen not to participate in that, and I don't want to speak for you. Kind of talk about your relationship with OEM, but one of the things I really liked about the blog post was you're going to put innovation first. That's the priority for you guys, and anything that gets in the way of innovation is a secondary concern, more or less. I want to make sure I've got that right. But Dave, how do you approach OEM as a business owner and as a founder of this agency? Yeah, I mean, it's innovation first and dealership first is the approach, right, for us. I mean, we have some good relationships with OEMs. Some of the things that those programs do is restrict, how quickly you can innovate. We really care about, doing, our culture of experimentation. As soon as we see something work, we test it out with a few more stores. And then, as quickly as possible, once we know that this is something that we should be doing for mass adoption, we want to get that out. And some of those programs will limit you to how quickly you can deploy some things that work and give dealers an advantage. That coupled with, some of the media spend pieces that, put a lot of commissionable dollars that dealerships don't necessarily need to be spending. There's a lot of OEM programs that we are co-op eligible for, just like you guys, and we educate our dealers that we are co-op eligible. I
give a major kudos to Chrysler for opening up SEO and social, this past month and a half. Still not PPC, but I think one of the things these programs do when you have to play in the same sandbox with the same rules and use the same keywords and all this kind of stuff is it really creates a more commoditized feel, and I think that's a disservice to the innovative companies out there.
I couldn't agree more. So we're very aligned in these ways. So, Dane, I wonder if I could ask you a few questions about ads and what a wild year it is for anyone in the paid world. One of the things that I think is almost dizzying for me is like this audience targeting, the cookieless world. At the beginning of the year, I learned about the federated learning of cohorts with the regrettable name Flock, which I never liked how that sounded. Mm-hmm. It's like you had something stuck in your throat. But this was supposed to replace cookies and improve, basically like sensitivity to user data. This isn't a thing anymore. Flock is gone. I just heard this week that in less than a year it's been replaced. Kind of just reflect back on this year. How are we supposed to, and then tell me, how are we supposed to serve personalized ads to people in 2022 with this sort of change? Yeah,
I know that, Flock became now it's topics, and topics, right. Well, that's a whole other bear to wrestle with in terms of capabilities and how that's going to flesh out. There's a lot of cost-efficient options like local and discovery ads, things that deal with, proximity and different Google assets that you have that you don't necessarily have to worry about such degrees and level of targeting that you have historically with a lot of paid search. And then, of course, then there's the idea of, other data sources, layering on data sources like IHS Polk and talking about all sorts of different ads too, social media ads as well, as we have the sort of limitations in what we see as limitations in targeting.
Changes and of course, too. Yeah.
And of course, first party data as well, leveraging that, which I think has been an underutilized aspect of ads for dealers and really for a lot of different organizations that I've talked to. But Dave, if you want to talk more to like the local and discovery ads, I know that we've delved a lot more into and mining different data points from those types of ads that we've really allocated a lot of time and investment with.
Yeah. I mean, we last year we actually won the Driving Sales Most Valuable Insight for kind of speaking to the change that's happening, in the landscape. I think it got expedited because of the pandemic and everyone wanted things right away and everything. But these privacy policy changes. Not having 40% of the cookies, all the Safari cookies, that's been gone for a while, and who knows what's going to happen with Chrome and some of these different things. But because of all this data loss that's happening, we're watching and seeing Facebook create more of an on-platform experience, and keeping people with the on-destination AAs, keeping people on the platform, and a lot of folks are creating ads that don't need to drive traffic back to the website, and that gets debated quite a bit about. How well that works towards different goals. We see a lot of really great results by keeping people within that ecosystem because Facebook is kind of rewarding with cheaper ads, and the results are cheaper in that area. And then, and plenty of times, I've heard, Greg talk about at conferences, and, we talked loudly about this too. I mean, all the changes happening to Google Business Profile, which, the new name as of just a couple months ago, right, from Google My Business. Right. If you look back over the last 2 years at all the changes that they're making on that, I mean, it's like every month there's 2 or 3 different new things happening. I mean, categories constantly changing, the attributes, adding the parts and service pages, the cars for sale last year. I mean, you can go on and on and on. And so, we're leaning into the idea that, Google's creating more of an on-platform environment because they want people to stay there because then those behaviors don't get lost through all these, more historical avenues in which we were driving, website traffic. That doesn't mean that, we don't want to drive a ton of website traffic. There's still thousands of pages, plenty of SEO work on the website to be done. Huge believers in that, but it's seeing that this is happening, and they continue to build on it. I mean, we think that there's going to be more customization in the future. There's going to be a lot more to these kind of like, Google Business Profile is almost like a microsite in itself. And we're thinking about why they're doing that. I think a lot of that comes back to the fact that, all their money comes from the ability to target audiences wisely and know what people are doing. So the more that they can keep people within the Facebook ecosystem or within the Google ecosystem, they can better target and better deliver, the ROI to keep people coming back and spending more money.
Interesting. Well, look, you mentioned a number of things there, Dave. Dane, feel free to chime in as well. But, we're talking about Google Business Profile, formerly known as GMB, just a second ago. We are part of the beta test for vehicle listing ads, or VLAs for short.
Yeah,
you guys are talking to dealers all the time. 2021 is like now in the rear view. We're filming this at the beginning of February. When you guys are talking to these dealerships, what features do you think they're missing out on? Like what isn't catching on that should have caught on? I'm always interested in the FOMO. What are people missing out on?
I can take this one, Dane. So, we do a lot of audits like on the sales team, and actually we've performed a couple of these for a couple of OEMs. So I talk about some of those relationships. We are more of an educator in our relationship with those folks than being in programs. And so we've run through and people just don't know what's new and out there. I mentioned, just in the GBP stuff, the Google Business Profile, all these new things that are available. I mean, we did one for one OEM. I'm not going to call them out specifically, but 60% of their dealers that were within this audit didn't have a parts and service separate page. So they're missing out on a ton of visibility through just the categories, not a low and optimized, and well built page. I mean, a lot of folks don't know about a lot of the new features that are out there and available, and I don't blame them too, because we've had to cut budgets back significantly. The inventory's been gone. There's a lot of these experimentation happens for stores when they're spending a little bit more money to try to win that allocation edge for themselves and grow their market share. But when everyone is selling all the vehicles that they have in inventory, there's a little bit less incentive to be going and learning about all these new things that are out there. All these new display features that Google has, competitor display, custom intent, and in-market integrations, and local ads is still, I think, like 25-30%, and that's changing too. I think, like as of last week, right, Performance Max is what local ads are turning into, but all these different things. I mean, they have it's very strong ROI. I mean, like a lot of behaviors. Low cost compared to some of the more traditional ways in which you can go around and spending. And I think, people aren't pushing this information and knowledge out there to the dealership partners. And because of the situation that they're in, they're not really it's not as urgent. But so much has changed over the last 2 years that I think midway through this year, we're going to see, the supply continue to come back. And we got a few dealerships that now it's like, dang, we got 100, 150 cars on the lot again, and we're back. And there's going to be a lot of folks that are like, okay, now how do we sell these cars? And then they're going to realize, dang, a whole lot has changed in these last 2 years. And it's changing, more things are changing faster than ever, I think, because of this new privacy landscape and the immediate expectation landscape, that combination, that if you're asleep at the wheel and you stay asleep too long, you're really going to fall behind.
I think that speaks to Dave's point, just, that can you mention on the dealer side, not only are you managing the digital marketing, but then you're interacting, when I talk to digital marketing managers, they're interacting with the BDC department, talking about what their needs are, what's coming in there. They're talking to the sales team. They're managing all these things just beyond what an agency sort of really focused on, right? We don't really have a hand in all those different honeypots inside the dealership like they do. So it's not a fault of the dealers, but you think about even just recently, what Microsoft Advertising did, the automated portfolio bidding now just came out, which helps with wholesale adjustments and automations to the bidding process on Microsoft Advertising, right? That's just a change that happened the other day. We're talking about Flock going away for topics. All these different changes happening at this blistering pace. So what they're missing out on is all these nuances, all these nuanced things, these little updates, not necessarily big systematic or systemic changes, but just these little updates that are happening that can help automate, quicken, ease the friction of decision making, get data insights. They're missing out on those things. And I think that it's important that they pay attention to agencies like ours, right, that are trying to do this education, because we're the ones with our thumbs on the pulse of this all to help them understand what these changes are. And I think that's where what stems what they're really missing out on, where that comes from.
That's well said, Dane, and I think that's an excellent answer. So, Dave, you mentioned it. I want to just give it some time for you guys to talk about it. At Driving Sales, you all won the industry's most valuable insight competition. For face-to-face, I just wanted to say congratulations to you all. And, let's start with Dane. If you could tell us about the award and what it meant to you guys to win it, I'd be all ears.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we make jokes because we love trophies and and all that kind of stuff, and so we like to get our information out there, our data out there, and all that kind of stuff. And so this was a number of different vendors across the industry, the auto industry, take data that they use and try to use that data to better explain what's happening in the industry. And so we competed. We were finalists with, I think it was Fixed Ops Digital and. Let's see, it was Modal and Roadster, I think. Which, I mean, unsurprising that you had two digital retailing companies in there, just given how quickly that dealership adoption happened in 2020, 2021, right? So basically, we were finalists with those folks, and then ended up winning that competition and got a chance to keynote at Driving Sales, which for me was actually my first keynote. Dane and I both have presented probably 50, 60, 70 times at these different shows. Nothing compared to the Greg Gifford, right? But we're out there and being loud a lot. But that was just a really cool thing for me personally too, and our company taking all these different ideas that are coming from each of our strong directors. Jessica, Giancarlo, Chelsea, Amy, our wonderful set of directors that are always looking at this data and using this data, and then kind of putting that together and explaining this story that's happened. And again, the move to more shopping behaviors and more shopping opportunities directly on platform to get around some of these privacy policy updates that have already happened, and legislation even has happened, and iOS 14.5 and beyond, and then what we expect to come. So we expect more of that. So that was an exciting one for us.
Awesome. Well, listen. Before I wrap up, I want to make sure people know, we actually are also in automotive. You're in automotive, but there's a real mutual respect between the two. At least from my side, I'll say.
Yeah, absolutely.
From Search Lab in the direction of Reunion. And before I let you go, anybody who's watching this who wants to learn more from you guys, how should they reach out to you? What's your favorite social media, and how can people connect?
Dave, you want to go first?
I'll go for it, Dane.
Yeah, I'm big on LinkedIn, so just my name, Dane, D-A-N-E, Saville, S-A-V-I-L-L-E, Dane Saville on LinkedIn. That's where I spend the majority of my time on social media, or just reach out directly to me through email, Dane, D-A-N-E, at reunionmarketing.com.
And mine is not too dissimilar. Instead of Dane at Reunion Marketing, it's Dave at reunionmarketing.com. That or LinkedIn, also a great ways to reach out to me as well.
I got to tell you, the only thing that was hard about this interview was saying Dave and Dane and getting it straight. So I appreciate you guys letting me off the hook. I'm Mark, and then our director of PPC is also named Mark, so I know about the name stuff. So anyway, you guys have been great to talk to this afternoon. I hope to see you on the road here in the not too distant future and have a beer with you in person. In the meantime, thanks for coming on, and I'm going to sign off now. We'll be back next week with another episode of Suds Search. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, well, our booths are right by each other at NADA.
Oh,
so,
hell yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be right across the way.
Let's get that beer.
Oh, this is going to be great. Yeah, so I'll see you in, I don't know, about a month from now. So
yeah,
sounds great.
All right, thanks again.
Thank you.
Take care.